Well, I don't think anybody liked what happened at Bud Walton Arena on Saturday afternoon. Just a disgusting basketball game, to say the least. And, of course, Tennessee lost that one. 1-1 on the week, a tough week. Not the end of the world. We'll break down all that was Tennessee basketball from Arkansas, plus Tennessee baseball, a season-opening series sweep. Troy Provost-Heron of Daily Times will stop by, and we'll talk to Tennessee baseball as well. All this on a Monday. Locked on Vols.
You are Locked On Vols, your daily podcast on the Tennessee Volunteers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, everybody. Welcome into another week of Locked On Vols. I'm Eric Cain. Glad to have you guys hanging out with me here today and subscribing and following this podcast at _Cainer is where you can find me on Twitter and at Locked On Vols. Every single episode, it's on YouTube. Please subscribe there. 435 subscribers on the YouTube channel at the time of this recording. Guys, that's like plus 45 in the last couple hours. So thank you so much for doing that. You guys mean the world. We'll talk hoops, we'll talk baseball, all that and more on a Monday show. Plus Troy Provost-Heron, he'll check in and to talk a little Tennessee baseball. Don't forget, Twitter Tuesday is tomorrow. So please get me in your Twitter Tuesday comments, questions, and concerns. But today is Monday, and this episode of Locked On Vols, it is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline's got you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, it is where the game starts. Okay, let's get into it. Tennessee falls on the road to Arkansas 58-48. Is this the end of the world? No, it's not. I know every loss sometimes feels like the end of the world. A lot of Tennessee fans live on every single win and loss, live on every single, shot that's attempted. And that's fine. It lives on every snap in football. That's okay. Fan, short for fanatic, right? But it's not the end of the world. Arkansas is a good team, but the way you played is the end of the world, in my opinion, right? Because we've seen this, and this is not good. This is not winning formula. This is not sustainable winning formula for Tennessee basketball. And the month of February, really, since that loss to Kentucky, and even in that Kentucky game, Tennessee looked really, really good offensively. You thought you were growing out of some of these pains, right? Tennessee shooting 27% from the field in this one. 16 of 59 shots made from the field. That is not great. You went back into your old habits of shooting the three-pointers, 4 of 24 from beyond the arc, 16.7%. And you didn't convert on your free throws, 66%, 12 of 18 from the charity stripe, which is never fantastic. So, I'm not saying Arkansas was much better. Arkansas was not much better. They shot only 30% from the field, 22% from long range, and 77% from the charity stripe. Had more opportunities at 22 attempts from the charity stripe, 17 to 22. But you look at Arkansas, Tennessee shot, 24 three-pointers. Arkansas shot 22 three-pointers. Tennessee made 4. Arkansas made 5. So, again, it was a rock fight. Tennessee played a rock fight against Texas. Tennessee was in a rock fight against Texas Tech. Tennessee was in a rock fight against Arkansas. The 58-48 final score. I was watching a little bit of the FSU Duke game that came on after this one, and just sitting there and I think Duke had 43 points at the half, and I'm like, Tennessee just scored 48 in an entire 40-minute ball game the game prior. Boy, it's just one of those games, right? And it's unfortunate, but again, it's not the end of the world because Tennessee got that much-needed win against Kentucky to split the week. Now, schedule's not getting much easier. You're on the road at Como on Tuesday night. You don't know what you're going to get from that team. Plus, it's a road game in the SEC. At Como, come back playing top, or at the time, a couple weeks ago, was top-ranked Auburn. Now it's number 2. Number 2 Auburn on Saturday. Then, again, you're at Georgia, and then you finish it off against Arkansas. So the schedule's tough. We know that. We've talked about that. You just hope Tennessee's offense doesn't fall back into this lull. And it's not like Arkansas was a great defensive team. Now, the defense has improved. We talked about what they were in the Kim Palm's defensive efficiency ratings coming into this game. It's been improved. The thing I think gave Tennessee trouble was the length, of course. But offensively, just not a great performance. You had double-figure scores in Zakai Ziegler, who finished with 12, Kennedy Chandler, who finished with 11. Kennedy Chandler still was only 5 of 15 from the field. Zakai Ziegler was only 2 of 8, okay? Santiago Vescovi, who usually is the pace man to score double figures, finished with 7 points. He was 2 of 13 shooting, 1 of 9 shooting for Tennessee. Josiah-Jordan James is 4 of 13, 0 of 6 from long range. He did finish with 8 points. He, he's starting to fall back into those old offensive habits that we don't like. His last 3 games have not been great from the field for Josiah-Jordan James. As always, still impacting the game in many different ways, but from the field, I've been a big Josiah supporter. I've always praised him. Okay, you guys know this, but I will always, like I do all the time with my analysis, when it's good, I talk about it. When it's bad, I talk about it. Josiah-Jordan James offensively has not been great the last 3 games, and that continued on in Bud Walton, excuse me, just a couple of days ago. Got 2 points for Uros Plavsic. He was playing critical minutes for Tennessee down the stretch. Missed a couple of critical free throws, 0-4 on the night. Why? Well, because Tennessee is playing with a lot of 4 fouls. You had Kennedy Chandler playing with 4 fouls. You had Josiah-Jordan James playing with 4 fouls, who ultimately ended up fouling out. You had Santiago Vescovi playing with 4 fouls. That meant a lot of minutes down the stretch for Uros Plavsic. A lot of minutes down the stretch for Jemiah Meshack. A lot of minutes down the stretch for Jonas Adu. Adu finished with 16 minutes played. Meshack finished with 3 minutes, all that coming at the end of the game. It just wasn't a good game for Tennessee, any way you want to spin it. John Fulkerson, who had been playing much improved, finished the game with 2 points, 3 rebounds. Nothing to really, brag about. Arkansas made it tough. And I'm never going to say that a team loses because of officials. I will never, ever say that, all right? But it is what it is, right? Arkansas, at times I didn't agree with some of these calls. Arkansas did have 24 fouls in this game. Tennessee did have 16 fouls in this game. So, or 24 to 16, 24 to 16. Tennessee committed 24 fouls. Arkansas committed 16 fouls, and it played a big role in this basketball game. It did down the stretch. The big one being the backbreaker it was Kennedy Chandler picking up his 3rd foul right before the halftime buzzer struck. I mean, that was huge. So Tennessee, a season low 5 assists on Saturday, a season low 5 assists. Tennessee turned it over 15 times, where Arkansas scored 13 points. Again, not a winning formula, and it wasn't just Tennessee. Arkansas was pathetic too on the other end, all right? J.D. Note finished with 13 points. He was 5-11 shooting, not the worst day in the office, but, Jalen Williams, a near double-double machine. He had a double-double on Saturday, 13 points. 16 rebounds was, the bag breaker. But you had Tony that finished with 8 points and 10 rebounds. You had Davis that finished with 7 points and 4 rebounds. And, of course, Note's threes were a big difference, as well as Davis's threes. He had 2 threes in that game, finished with 7 points. So just ugly. I wouldn't look too much into this. I really wouldn't, because you're going to get Arkansas coming back to home inside TBA, and it's going to be a different atmosphere. I mean, that Bud Walton Arena is a tough place to play. But you can't overcome everything. You cannot overcome foul trouble being 1. You cannot overcome an awful shooting day, that being 2. You cannot overcome poor free throw shooting, that being 3. And you cannot overcome a great home field atmosphere, that being 4. Tennessee had 4 things, at least 4 things that I just mentioned going against them. You can't think that you're going to overcome that on a given night and try to win a basketball game. So it was just tough, right? I mean, Tennessee lost by 10 points. That was the biggest lead Arkansas had towards the end of the game with 6 seconds left, took the lead by 10 points, and that's how it finished. Just kind of is what it is. An ugly game, one that you look back, you learn from, and you move on because you've got more pressing matters. Again, game at Como on Tuesday night, on the road, back against Auburn. Florida doing the Lord's work, right? Florida doing the Lord's work over the weekend and coming up with that win. Things are getting interesting in the SEC. And nobody thought Tennessee would go 6-0 in this brutal 6-game stretch. After that win against Kentucky, we thought, hey, maybe 5-1, 4-2 would be great. My expectation going into it again was 3-3. With that win against Kentucky, that shifts to 4-2. I think Tennessee can finish this 4-2. So, still a lot to play for. One bad game where you went back into what you did against Texas. You went back to where you did against Texas Tech. You went back and shot where you did against Villanova. One bad game and a stretch of games to where Tennessee was playing great and inspired offensive and defensive basketball. Tennessee's 8-game win streak inside the SEC is snapped. What do? You got to start a new one, right? Tennessee at Como on Tuesday night. We'll break all that down for you on a Tuesday. Locked On Balls coming up tomorrow. Hey, don't forget, get your Twitter Tuesday questions in as you take your questions. We'll take your questions, your comments, your concerns, all that on Tennessee basketball. Troy, Provost-Heron will stop by the show and talk a little Tennessee baseball weekend opening sweep over Georgia Southern. And this past weekend, if you had some coin on Auburn, maybe you didn't do so hot. I did all right, though, because I had some coin on a lot of the teams over at betonline.net. Football's over, okay? But basketball, it's in full swing, obviously in the college realm and in the pros. We just come off the All-Star game last night, which, by the way, All-Star weekend, what a joke. From all the latest odds and the totals and player props and performances to where the next coach might be fired, right, and where he might land, it's your number one spot. That'd be betonline.net, your number one spot for all your sports betting needs. Okay, BetOnline is the best spot for all your scores, your podcasts, your news this basketball season, this baseball season, and more. But it's not just those sports, okay? BetOnline.net, your source for hockey, for boxing, for UFC, right to the Olympic coverage over in Beijing. Head on over to the website today. Use your mobile device as well. You can sign up and learn all about the action. BetOnline, it is where the game starts. Well, it's baseball season again, and it was a good weekend for the Tennessee baseball team at Lindsey Nelson Stadium. A dominant season opening sweep over Georgia Southern, a series that set a program record attendance for a weekend series, and some good pitching, great hitting. 33 to, I believe, 3 was what Tennessee outscored the Eagles at Georgia Southern over. And now to come on and tell us all about it from the Daily Times, it is Troy Provost-Heron. Troy, what's going on, man?
Good. Anytime baseball's back, I'm happy, so I can't complain.
Yeah, it was a good start, obviously, for Tennessee. And we continue, for the average fan, we're talking, they went to Omaha, they went to the College World Series last year, which was so much fun, hosted a regional, hosted a super regional and all that. And, we had Ben on, we had John Wilkerson on last week. And obviously, as we saw this weekend, there's a lot of new faces in there. And some of those faces showed up just huge this weekend, both on the mound and in the lineup. Tell us a little bit about the new guys who came to bat and did well for Tennessee this weekend.
Yeah, a bunch of guys. Even some guys that have been on the roster before that, haven't really played as much. Jarrell Ortega's a guy that steps out to me. He hit 2 home runs in the first 2 days. Seth Stevenson hit a home run. He's a new guy. Just a bunch of guys. And I think, that was a big question mark heading into the year. How do you replace guys like Max Ferguson and Jake Rucker and all those guys who were Liam Spence, all those guys who were just so important to that run to Omaha last year? How do you go about replacing that production? And Seth Stevenson talked a little bit about today, and Jordan Beck did as well. Like, they never doubted that this offense would be as good as it was last year. They just kind of came out, did their thing. Like you said, 33 runs in 3 games. That's massive, and that's an amazing way to start a season.
Now, let's go to the mound. And, injury bug, we've talked about it on this show before. It's incredible. You hate the injuries, especially like a guy like Blake Tidwell, who's, freshman All-American that did so well last year in the SEC. But Chase Burns, a true freshman on Friday night. Chase Dolander, a transfer from Georgia Southern, did incredible work, except for 1 inning on Saturday. And then you had a newcomer as well, here on Sunday. 3 brand new starting pitchers for Tennessee, and they did really well. Of course, the competition will get a whole lot better, especially in a couple of weeks when you go to Minute Maid Park and then when you get into SEC play. But what did you like from the starters here this weekend?
Yeah, obviously, Chase Burns comes in with a massive amount of hype. Big guy, throws as hard as he does, great off-speed stuff, and he kind of lived up to it a little bit. I think he'll only get better as, he gets more comfortable out there on an SEC mound. Chase Dolander, absolutely nasty yesterday against Georgia Southern, 11 strikeouts and 4 2/3. Admitted to getting a little bit tired there in that 6th inning, but what else can you say about that guy and what he kind of brings to them? And then Drew Beam today, a guy who, Tennessee wasn't really sure who would be its Sunday guy today. He steps in as a true freshman and pitched pretty well. And all 3 guys, obviously new to the program, but with some tremendous stuff. And I think that's something that you see from this staff now, even, without Blade Tidwell, without, Halverson, is there's a lot more velocity. There's a lot more stuff in this pitching staff this year than there was a year ago. And that's not a slight to guys like Will Heffler or anything like that who are starting. And they're obviously more than serviceable on the mound a year ago. But when you look at what this staff looks like currently, and that's without, 2 of its biggest arms, they look more like an SEC pitching staff than it ever has under Tony Vitello. And I think that's something that should be, a little scary for other SEC teams, because Tennessee has had a lot of success under Vitello with guys who maybe didn't pitch like they belonged in the SEC, and now they have those guys.
You mentioned Dahlander. He ran into some trouble there in that sixth. He admitted after the game when we were standing there that he hadn't really gone that far here this early, and so maybe that was the issue. But I mean, 11 strikeouts, I believe. I've been drawing some DeGrom comparisons in the way of his delivery, so that was awesome to see. But also the bullpen, and of course Drew Beam, as you mentioned, I blanked on his name, a former Blackman quarterback here in Tennessee, and he gets to start in Game 3 of the season. But the bullpen as well gave up no runs this weekend. Redmond Walsh looked good on Saturday. Ethan Smith, the transfer from Vanderbilt, picked up the win on Saturday as well. What's this bullpen going to look like? And I feel like obviously the more the starters kind of take shape and how their durability and how they look the first couple weekends of the season will obviously shape up the way that bullpen looks too.
Yeah, I think the bullpen's interesting because I don't know if necessarily we'll know what it looks like, come SEC play for a couple more weeks. Obviously, Redmond Walsh is kind of entrenched as a late inning guy, and you could probably say the same thing about Camden Sewell. It kind of looks like, Tony Vitello mentioned it today, that Camden Sewell wants to start, but it kind of looks like he's going to kind of fill in for Sean Hunley in that kind of stopper role that Hunley was so amazing at a year ago. And then what the rest of it looks like, who knows? I mean, Ben Joyce threw today, and his first pitch was 100 miles an hour, and he has that type of amazing velocity that screams late inning reliever. But how that kind of fits into their plans, who knows? They have so many arms in that bullpen. Halverson being a guy who, again, is he a starter? Is he a reliever for you? That's all going to kind of come together in the next couple of weeks as they figure some things out. I think right now, you have two definitives in Redmond Walsh and Camden Sewell in that bullpen. And how the other stuff shapes out, I think, is stuff that neither you nor I, maybe not even Tony Vitello at this point, kind of knows exactly at this point.
It wasn't an issue this weekend, but something that I picked up on, and I'm sure everybody else has as well, if you watch this opening series, that could be an issue, when you get it, into SEC play and against some better competition. The pulse of this team is Evan Russell, right? And so unselfishly switches positions this offseason, goes behind the plate. He's managing that staff with a lot of new names, but there were some guys who ran on, took second a couple times, guys that took third. It's not all Russell. It's also the pitcher. It's called the battery for a reason. How do you see that playing out? Is that going to be an issue all season long? Am I overblowing it right now? Is that something to pay attention to in terms of, managing the runners on base with the battery currently right now?
Yeah, I do think it is something that obviously stands out in terms of Evan maybe not being able, as strong-armed as a guy like Connor Pavoloni was last year, right? But I think in today's modern baseball, you don't see a whole bunch of steals unless you're Vanderbilt and you have Enrique Bradfield and you turn that guy loose and hope he steals 70 bases, which you should. I mean, he would run like a 4.2 in the NFL Combine if you let him run. So it makes sense. I don't necessarily think it's as big a deal because, I mentioned Connor Pavoloni. I mean, as strong-armed as that guy was a year ago, he still gave up a lot of steals just because, Tennessee doesn't necessarily seem to, do a fantastic job of, or necessarily even care. I don't necessarily know if it's a fantastic job, but it's just like they don't tend to care too much about runners on base. They're okay with you running. They trust in their pitchers enough to get outs. And so those things don't necessarily matter to them as much. And again, I just don't think teams steal a whole bunch nowadays. So could it be a problem? Of course it could. And I think, that might be something that teams down the road pick up on and say, you know what, we have to test this guy a little bit more. And this might be a way for us to scratch across some runs against a staff that has more stuff than Tennessee's pitchers have in the past. But again, that's another question that we won't, I don't think, know until later along the line.
Yeah, a couple of shutouts here this weekend of a series sweep over Georgia Southern. 2 midweek games this week. Tennessee Tech on Tuesday at 4:30, UNC Asheville Wednesday at 4:30, and then hosting Iona for a 3-game set this weekend. Right now, I guess we kind of know what that weekend rotation looks like, at least the first draft of it. Who are some options who might get the start in these midweek contests? I would assume at least one game is going to be a bullpen game. Who are some of those options we can expect against the Golden Eagles and UNC Asheville?
Yeah, I'm not really even sure because it goes back to, where they're kind of trying to figure some things out right now. Tony kind of kept that close to the vest today. And he basically said, there's a lot of guys on this team that want to play right now. And, in a 5-game week, you have the opportunity to play a lot of guys. And so where they go from there, who they start in the midweek, how long they go, how many arms they want to throw, I think that'll be a very interesting thing because, as you go throughout a season, obviously you want to have your three big starters on the weekend. You want to have your guys that you go to late in games on the bullpen, but you also kind of do want to have some guys you trust in the midweek because you don't want to be losing games to lesser opponents in terms of RPI and all that stuff when you're talking about regional settings and wanting to host and all that stuff. So I think that'll be something that actually is really interesting to watch on Tuesday and Wednesday against Tennessee Tech and UNC Asheville is just who are those guys you trust enough to go out there, pitch well enough to, keep the runs down and let this offense, which seems pretty dominant to this point, go out there and score some runs and pick up those wins.
All right, so we don't know an awful lot about this team. Obviously, just 3 games in, it'll take shape. It'll transform as the season goes on, and as we inch ever so closer to SEC play. What are some things I guess that you're looking for in these next 5 games this week in terms of maybe you got a little bit of it this weekend, you want to see more of it. It's just some more questions that you'd like to see some answers to this weekend with 5 opportunities, or this week with 5 opportunities.
Yeah, through those first 3 games, how they kind of played out the middle of the infield with Jorel Ortega playing second base, Cortland Lawson playing short, and then kind of alternating who plays left field, I think is very interesting. I think, I came into the year expecting to see a little bit more of Kyle Booker, and I think he DH'd today, if I'm not mistaken. And so just kind of how they utilize those positions. It kind of looks like Cortland Lawson is settled into shortstop because he's by far and away the team's best defensive shortstop. And I think that's such a key position when you talk about a great team, just having a guy there that can really make some plays and stuff like that. So I think that's big. I don't necessarily think Jorel Ortega is locked into second base by any means, despite the 2 home run week and what he did this weekend. So I think that's kind of what I'm looking for. How does that middle infield shape up? What does left field look like? Logan Chambers played there a little bit there this weekend, and Seth Stevenson played there some guys both those guys have never played in left field before. So how that kind of shapes up, those are the positions to watch going forward. And I think the next 2 weeks, 3 weeks will be very telling on how that kind of shapes up.
You can tell how hard Troy works. He's actually, this video portion is coming from his car in the parking garage right outside Lindsey Nelson Stadium. So I got him as soon as he left the stadium on Sunday afternoon. Troy, I appreciate it, man. Where can our viewers find more of your work, especially right now during the end of basketball season and, of course, baseball season?
Of course, yeah. You can follow me on Twitter at Troy_Provost and all of our stuff at The Daily Times at thedailytimes.com.
Great stuff, man. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Eric.
All right, that is awesome stuff there from Troy. Give him a follow. Does a fantastic job. One of the few that covers every single game for Tennessee baseball. A true guy on the beat. That is Troy. Give him a follow. All right, guys. Built Bar, let me tell you all about it. It's the time of the year where you really need to start looking at your figure. Hey, summer months is just, it's just a couple of weeks away, rather, when you get into those springtime temperatures and you start making plans for the beach and for the lake and the river and all that type of stuff. And if you're looking to lose or maintain weight, looking to shape up your diet a little bit, let me tell you about Built Bar. Built Bars, they're incredibly tasting. They have a ton of different flavors. They're mostly sitting around 130 calories, about 4 grams of sugar, 4 net carbs, but 17 grams of protein. It will give you energy. It is good for you. And it is a fantastic alternative to a candy bar, because most candy bars, they're sitting somewhere around 240 calories. So I'm throwing a lot of numbers at you right now, but what you need to know, Built Bar good, candy bar bad, right? So if you want to have a healthy alternative to that mid-afternoon snack, something that you just go to because you're just hungry or you want something sweet, all that Built Bar, because I mentioned the sweet, right? Built Bar covered in 100% chocolate. Yes, I'm not lying to you. It is 100% chocolate. So where can you find all the selection of the Built Bars out there? You can do it at built.com. And while you're there, use the promo code LOCK15 and you're going to get 15% off your order. Use promo code LOCK15 for 15% off. That's at built.com. We got a final segment left here on a Monday edition of Locked On Vols. I'm Eric Cain. Thanks so much for hanging out with me here today and coming back every single week for some more Locked On Vols coverage. Twitter Tuesday, your comments, your questions, your concerns, get them at me. DMs are open. Slide on in there like Chris Collinsworth does in that Sunday night football booth at _Cainer and at Locked On Vols. Okay, so I kind of touched on it in segment number 1, basketball, some closing remarks. Hey, chill. It's okay. All right. I know it's disgusting. I know it was awful to watch. I know I would rather go and cover 10 3-hour and 45-minute baseball games before I watched that one basketball game ever again, because it was just that awful. It was so bad. But we knew this stretch was going to be tough. We knew it was going to be challenging, and I told you, not just me, okay? It's not like, I mean, I've never been to a game there, so it's not even like me from firsthand, but in speaking with people last week and, guests and everything like that, and I didn't play the interview, and I'm going to get him on before we play Arkansas next time here in the schedule in a couple of days, but I'm going to get on John Neighbors, who is a host of Out of Bounds. It's his radio show. It's 1 to 4 Central Time. Over on 103.7 The Buzz. That's the flagship station for the Arkansas Razorbacks. I got him on my Saturday morning show on The Sports Animal to talk and preview that matchup. And he was talking about it too, about how it's just such a challenging place to play, aesthetically, kind of with the way it's built, obviously the atmosphere and all that over in Bud Walton Arena. So it was a tough place to play. One of the hardest places to play in the country, especially this season. It is not the end of the world. But Tennessee can't continue to fall back in that lull and that shooting, relying on threes, taking sloppy shots, getting tired. So much of this had to do in foul trouble. I understand that. You don't want Uros Plavsic playing in crunch time minutes in the fourth quarter, especially going to the line, because chalk it up as an L, because that's exactly what it was. But points in, I mean, somebody had to play, right? Now, could you went to Fulkerson? For sure. Could you went to, somebody else, go small, put Meshack at the 4, whatever, and Tennessee did that some. It is what it is. It's one game. It's one game. It's one game. You got 4 left, and they're going to be challenging. They are going to be challenging. Tennessee's 1-1 right now, split against 2 of the best teams, arguably in the country, especially in the SEC. It's going to be all right. See how Tennessee bounces back playing a night game in Como on Tuesday night. On the road in the SEC in Missouri, it's always kind of weird and bizarre. So how does Tennessee respond against another team that hangs its hat on defense? We will find out, but I'm intrigued and looking forward to seeing that. But hey, baseball was fun this weekend, was it not? We had Troy on. He did a fantastic job just kind of breaking down exactly the big highlights from this weekend series and all that type of stuff. But so much to get into, and we're going to kind of break it down game by game just quickly here on Locked On Vols. Monday night, the debut of Chase Burns, who turned down millions and millions and millions of draft capital to come and play for Tennessee this year. He looked really, really good as a true freshman, getting the opening start, opening day starts in the SEC, playing for the Power T. He looked good. 5 innings, gave up 2 hits, no runs, had 5 strikeouts, 70 pitches in 5 innings. That's pretty solid. Chase Burns, the story of the night, clocking in at 98 miles per hour was his fastball. But the story on Friday night was the newcomers to that lineup, right? Tennessee, as we talked about with Ben and John, last week, Tennessee, a lot of new faces in this lineup. And you had Seth Stevenson, you had Christian Scott, you had Trey Lipscomb, you had Joel Ortega, all those guys homered in the game on Friday night. So it was kind of the story of the newcomers that got Tennessee a 9-0 win over Georgia Southern on Friday night. Let's shift to Saturday. I was there. I was covering this game. It was a whole lot of fun. It was cruising right along there until that 6th inning. Zeros spanned the scoreboard from innings 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, or 5. Then we got to the 6th inning. Chase Dolander, who formerly of Georgia Southern, pitching against his old team, had 11 strikeouts leading up to the 5th inning, right? He was looking incredible. Ran into some trouble there in the 6th, or to the 6th inning. Ran into some trouble there in the 6th, got a little tired, gave up 3 runs. Tennessee was down 3-0 at that point in the game. And then Tennessee rattles off, 10 unanswered runs to end the ball game and win 10-3. The big blast coming from the veterans, all right? You had Kyle Booker, who has been on this team for a couple of years. He got Tennessee on the board first. You had Evan Russell, who got Tennessee a game-tying 2-run single through the left side. It was tied 3-3. Luke Lipsius, the first baseman, he gave Tennessee the lead with an RBI single. And then from there, you had Ortega under the blast again. Drew Gilbert at a grand slam in that 5-run bomb of the 8th inning. It was a fun game to watch. Tennessee goes on and wins 10-3. And Chase Dolander, he ran out of gas there in that 6th inning, but 11 strikeouts, getting some Jacob deGrom comparisons from those who cover minor league prospects and college prospects. Boy, it looked really, really good. And then you roll into Sunday, and Tennessee finishes off 14-0 The bats came alive, no home runs, but 6 doubles. You had 2 triples, so 8 extra base hits for this Tennessee offense. And another true freshman getting the nod on a Sunday start, Drew Beam, formerly the quarterback of Blackman High School in the Mid-State. He goes 3 innings, throws 60 pitches, but no runs, walked 3, no runs, give up only 1 hit. It's going to take him a while to stretch out his arm a little bit. But remember, no Blake Tidwell for the Volunteers to start the season, so Tennessee relying on a lot of new faces. Bottom line, Tennessee's arms looked great this weekend. The bullpen looked fantastic. Camden Sewell, who we didn't think that Tennessee would have this weekend, came on and threw, had 2 appearances. I think he threw, 2 innings on Sunday and 2 innings on Friday. Yeah, threw 4 scoreless innings. He looked really, really good. Ben Joyce came on, made his season debut, and Tennessee's going to rely on him. He looked really good. Ethan Smith got the win on Saturday, that Vanderbilt transfer. He gave up 3 hits, didn't look great, but looked all right. Redmond Walsh pitched a couple of times. He looked good. So the arms look fantastic. And the bats looked really, really good. Again, Georgia Southern's not going to win a national championship this year, just not. But the way Tennessee played Georgia Southern, that's a pretty good baseball program there, okay, was inspiring. The way Tennessee's bats just continue to rally was inspiring. 5 games this week, 2 midweek games against UNC Asheville and Tennessee Tech. Tech is on Tuesday. Asheville's on Wednesday. Then you got a 3-game set against Iona this weekend. A lot of chances to see the Tennessee baseball team, these players, as Tony Vitello continues to try to find his starting lineup. Played a lot of guys. The lineup card looked different each and every game this weekend, and we thought that would be the case moving in. But nonetheless, Tennessee, a dominant 3-game sweep over Georgia Southern to begin this baseball season and outscored them 33-3. Do want to make note of the attendance, okay? Tennessee's attendance count for Friday when it was 28, when it was like 30 degrees. It was about 38 degrees, when it was about 38 degrees and it was muggy and overcast and looked kind of gross. 4,335 people on Friday night's game. Saturday's game, 4,651 attendees. Sunday's game, Tennessee had 4,580 attendees. All that together, and that's the biggest weekend at Lindsey Nelson Stadium history. Not just season opening weekend, but the biggest weekend ever for a series in terms of total attendance. Shattered the record by about 2,400. So all you guys are out at Lindsey Nelson Stadium, congratulations to you. You were part of history, and hopefully this is a sign to come for Tennessee throughout the season. So hope you enjoyed Troy Provost-Heron as he came on and talked a little bit about this weekend and my analysis on what I saw from Tennessee baseball over the weekend. Tennessee basketball, one to forget, but chances to move on and still finish off strong. So don't freak out. Everybody stay calm. And, of course, we got Twitter Tuesday coming in tomorrow. So a lot thrown at you here on a Monday. Hope you enjoyed it. Thank you guys so much for making Locked On Vols your first listen and for subscribing on YouTube. I've been posting that YouTube show a little bit earlier now, not at 9 o'clock, really kind of overnight, like the audio portion. So you wake up in the morning. If you like listening and watching stuff on YouTube, you can find this podcast on YouTube when you wake up as well. All right, guys. Again, thanks so much for making Locked On Vols your first listen. Now, your second listen of the day, make it the Locked On NFL Draft. Ryan Tracy, former NFL cornerback Eric Crocker, bring the NFL Draft to life every day with insight and analysis on college football prospects and NFL front offices. It's free. It's available wherever you get your podcast. That is Locked On NFL Draft. Make that your second listen here today. Guys, as always, thanks so much. You guys rock. We'll do it again for Twitter Tuesday. Get me in those questions on tomorrow's show.